Welcome to Self-Discovery Media Network, formerly known as Self-Discovery Radio. Each week we bring you illuminating shows from those making a difference in the lives of others. They've taken their own journey. They're here to share their skills, their wisdom to help you on yours. You can see more about us at selfdiscoverymedia.com, and please listen to our wonderful collection of shows. Our next show is...
Well, hello, everybody. How are you? My name is Charles Eduardos, of course, and you are entering the world according to GUS, God, Universe, Spirit. Here's a place where so many people will acknowledge God in their own way, and we're not here to pound our fist about any particular doctrine. We're not here to judge or condemn, but to acknowledge, whether you refer to that supreme being, that ultimate wisdom as God, whether you refer to it as spirit, whether you refer to it as, universe? Yes, God, universe, spirit. We're here just to talk about those things and our spirituality and how we understand it. And I am absolutely astounded and blessed to be able to have the guest that we have today, who is also a host and has her own show here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. And she is the incredible Lynnis Mullins. And wow, I'm going to let her... Lynnis, tell us about your journey, the things where you have come to be who you are, and where your focus is. I know you do coaching. I know you have a couple of different focuses, and there's different overlap. But just introduce yourself to the folks from the world according to us.
Well, thank you, first of all. It's wonderful to be on your broadcast and to be a part of your listening audience, because I do listen to your shows. And it's just great to be able to talk with like minds and to realize sometimes that you're not the only one who thinks that way. Sometimes I think, am I the only one who's thinking that way? And of course, I know I'm not. But, in the work that we do,
sure.
You always are looking for some kind of confirmation that you're on the right track. There's so much out there, for people to use. And, I always say that I don't want to be the coach to everyone. I just want to be a coach to a few people that, God places on my heart in terms of what it is I need to do to put those good seeds into the world. But I have a company called PraiseWorks Health and Wellness. It was founded 10 years ago, and I am also the creator of the Wellness Woman 40 and Beyond brand. And basically, I am a holistic living and wellness coach that specializes in working with women over 40. And I do that through talking about holistic practices, fitness, nutrition, and spiritual renewal. I have a magazine called Wellness Woman 40 and Beyond. It's an online magazine. I have two shows that I produce. The Wellness Journey, right here on this network, the Self-Discovery Network, and also Living Well Woman, which is a Facebook Live show that I just started and now is on YouTube as well and is distributed through a lot of different audio platforms. I also have an online school called Wellness Woman 40 and Beyond Holistic Academy, and there you can go to this online school and take classes on several topics around stress and weight release and menopause and anti-aging. I also just got through writing a book called Power Up Superwoman, which is a compilation. I'm a co-author. It's just not my book, but I'm in good company with about 16 other women who share stories about from whence they came and some of the tragedies or trauma they've experienced, how they came out of it, and what they learned as a result of going through that. So I'm really excited about that book. I got a chance to read all the stories because I wrote the back cover for the book, and I just love that book. And I also have a group, the Wellness Woman 40 and Beyond group on Facebook. And I love this group. It's for women all over the world. I mean, literally, from Indonesia to Canada to Great Britain to Spain to here in the United States, of course. It's Africa, China, Japan. It's amazing how many different women this messaging seems to attract. And they're all women over 40 or 50 who are yearning to still stay vital. And also, not that they're not vital, but they want to be looked upon as vital. In our society here in the United States and other parts of the world, less in other parts of the world as it is here in the United States, ageism, you know?
Yeah.
And so the idea that after 40, you know, you're kind of on your way out, especially if you're a woman. And I say, oh no, because at 51, I left my job in corporate America. I was a human resources executive and had been for 25 years. Not an executive, but in human resources. I've been executive about 10 years. And I had an epiphany one morning. I woke up and I couldn't stop crying. And at first I didn't know I was crying. Tears were coming out of my eyes. But I thought, you know how sometimes you wake up in the morning, your eyes are just watering?
Yeah.
But that was not what this was. And long story short, I called into my office and, you know, called into work, which is something I never did. I worked from home, so I normally didn't have to call in from work. And this was 10 years ago, so working from home was still new, but I was one of the lucky people who got to work from home. And in fact, I was considered a lucky person or a blessed person anyway. I, you know, had the so-called American dream. I lived in a beautiful home, had a husband that made a lot of money. I made a lot of money. My kids were all approaching college or in college. You know, things were going well on the surface. But inside, I can tell you, I was just all screwed up. I really was. And how it exacerbated was through this morning where my emotional closet, I couldn't put one more thing in there, not one more thing. And it was just coming out through the tears coming out of my eyes.
Sure.
My children and my husband made me go to emergency. That's how concerned they were because they're seeing that other Lynnis that was always, you know, on all the time, always up all the time. And I tried to cover it up in front of them, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
And so I went through a series of tests, talked to a social worker, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, all the ist, you know, talked to the doctors.
Sure.
And what happened was, I guess I kind of had like an intervention because the hospital I went to happened to have been the hospital where I worked. I worked for an HMO and my offices were based there, even though I was in charge of like 4 different hospitals. I was based there at the hospital where I was sitting in the emergency in this gown that opens up in the back, totally humiliated, with the administration, the top heads of the administration saying, Lynnis, you're exhausted, you need to take a break. And I was like, oh, no, I'm fine.
Don't we do that?
Yeah. Look, you know, in the background, they're like, okay, yeah, right. You look like you're really good. So I just said, no, we want you to go on sabbatical. Take a break. And at least for a week or so. And, you know, find out what's going on. We have a place where you can check in. And so they talked me into it because basically my boss, who was also my friend, he said, you know what, Lynnis, if you don't do this, then I'm not going to let you come back to work. I'm going to retire. You can't come back. In other words, you know, I'm going to find a way to let me go, which would have been interesting. There's no way he could have done that. But at that time, I knew something was wrong and I did want to do something.
Sure.
I made a decision to make a change.
Yeah.
So I went to the Respite, and it was while I was there that I found this book by, and I always have to, mental block, I can never remember it. I have to always look at it. That way I'm touching it every day. It was called by Melody Beattie, The Language of Letting Go.
Yeah, okay, very good, yeah.
Yes, and because I could books with me. And so they had all these books there. And a couple of things I found out when I was at this place. First of all, I found out that I wasn't quite as crazy as some of the inhabitants that were there. You know, I wasn't like talking to trees and stuff like that because there wasn't people who were talking to trees. Wasn't doing that. But one thing that I did have in common with everybody that was there was that I needed help. I needed help. And the language of letting go kind of helped me realize that I needed help. So after a week when I left there, I started going to a therapist and realized after about 4 or 5 months that I wanted to do something totally different with my life. And decided to take a year sabbatical. And during that year sabbatical, while I was still getting paid, and while they were thinking I was coming back, I was working on figuring out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so that's where PraiseWorks Health and Wellness was born. On the day that I was due to go back, I went into the office and I said, you know, I'm not coming back. And they're like, they could not believe it. They weren't really happy. They've given me since then, and they see what I'm doing now. But and so initially I thought that I would use my dance background and teach women over 40 how to dance. I rented a space from my local church and began teaching praise dance. And I quickly found out after about 2 or 3 classes that the women needed so much more than that. I had women in that class who were my age. And at that time, I was about 51. So I had women in there that were 40, 50, 60. There was one woman who had just been through a divorce and she was suffering from depression. Another one who was retired and was dealing with empty nest syndrome. 2 other ones that were obese. Another one had high blood pressure. Another lady who had just been diagnosed with diabetes. Someone else who was raising her grandchild and had no energy. And then a couple other women who were just single and needed to be around with people. And as I looked at this tribe of women who I began teaching lessons to, I realized that I need to get more training and figure out what I can do to help them from a health perspective. I didn't want to go back to school. I already had my grad degree. Didn't want to go back and, you know, become a doctor or anything like that. And that's when I discovered the world of mind, body, spirit wellness and the importance of addressing the needs of the mind, the body, and the spirit.
Yes.
This was 2008, 2009. And I was so naive about what was going on the internet. I didn't even know what social media was. When I found out about Facebook, I was all excited with my kids, and they were like, Mom, we've already been on that. And I think about that now, and I'm thinking, wow, what was going on with them at the time when they were online, and I didn't even know it. But back then, it wasn't as controversial.
Yeah, it was very different back in those days.
Yeah. So anyway, I decided that I wanted to get my certification in holistic health. And then I got one in life coaching, and then one in yoga and Pilates, one in nutrition. I just got all these certifications, still not sure, you know, what I'm going to do with all this. And while I'm doing that, quite by happenstance, I ended up creating a show called The Wellness Journey on the Voice America Network. I mean, it's kind of like the horse before the cart, because I didn't have any clients, didn't have a coaching program, and was still getting educated. But I found I had an affinity for it. And, you know, 9 years later, I still have that show. But anyway, I learned through all of this in this journey of, you know, getting credentialed, but also finding out what resonated with my spirit, the importance of making that decision. Even if you don't know how you're going to accomplish that goal that you've set for yourself or that change that you want for your life, but just recognizing, first of all, there's a problem.
Yes.
And then making the decision that you're going to address the problem. And where I started from, you know, back then when I was teaching dance, and then, you know, building my own website, having a show, you know, writing programs for coaching and all that, I look back at all of that, and that was all necessary.
Yes.
It might have taken me twice as long as someone who wants to do something like that now today, but I have such a rich form of reference. My foundation of how I built my business and how I built my craft is so solid because I made so many mistakes. And what I want to tell the listeners as we start talking about, you know, how to make lifestyle changes or how to get motivated to be a lifestyle change is that sometimes, you know, you have to do it with fear anyway. You have to do it knowing that you might make mistakes.
Well, absolutely. There's a great book by Otto Schermer called, the title of the book is Theory U, but the subtitle is Leading from the Future as It Emerges. So what you have shared there is you gave yourself permission, what I'm hearing, how you gave yourself permission. It was like you knew something wasn't right inside. You were feeling it. You felt there needed to be some kind of a change in your life, but you weren't quite sure what that change was. You were allowing GUS, God, Universe, Spirit, to kind of lead you in a direction. It's almost like, sounds like the Abraham story in the Old Testament in Genesis when God said, I'm going to take you into a land of milk and honey, but he didn't tell Abraham all the details. You know, he didn't say, here's the map, here's where you're going to have to go, this is what you're going to have to experience. He says, I'm just going to lead you into a land. And so you have been moving on this journey into your promised land, so to speak. So, you know, you were talking about how is it that you get, because nobody outside of you can motivate you. All motivation comes from inside of you. some people can maybe speak to what that is, but how do you get people motivated? How do you get yourself motivated to make the change? Because so many people, I know you see people that are just sick and tired of being sick and tired, but they don't do anything about it.
Exactly.
They're stuck.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think it's probably a little bit different for everyone, but I can tell you what I did and what I talked to my clients about doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, we have a lot of walking wounded.
Yes.
A lot of people who are hurting, who don't know what joy is. Yeah. I was one of those walking wounded. Absolutely. I mean, as I was going through therapy, and it wasn't until maybe about 5 years going into my business that I realized what I had. I knew I had an anxiety disorder, but I didn't know where it came from. And I found out that I actually had post-traumatic stress based upon a situation that happened in my life that was pretty tragic. And that was, my mother being killed on her way to work. She was hit by a fire truck on her way to work.
Oh, wow.
And how I found out was just so traumatic that I began working on controlling the outcome. No matter what, I was never going to be surprised again. I was always going to make sure that I control the outcome, which is, of course, crazy. That means you're trying to control, your kids, your husband, your job, your friends, everything. Yes. And that's impossible. That's crazy. Yes. So as I began to unlearn, and one of the things that I made up my mind on one thing. First of all, I made up my mind that I wanted to make a change. Once you arrive at that place where you want to make the change, that you or you arrive at a place where I have a problem and I want to make a change, or I have a problem and I want to solve that problem. That's where the motivation starts. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, in order for all the things you do after to stick, the therapists you go to, the coaches you might hire, the programs you enroll in, the books that you read, you first want to make that change. That's where the impetus of the self-motivation starts, is that you want to make a change. Yeah. And, wanting to make a change doesn't mean that, okay, then you have a plan, and this is what I'm going to do. It won't. Right. Or sometimes you want to make the change and you have a plan, but it doesn't work. Yeah. It's part of the journey. It's part of that process. But making that first decision that you want to make the change is what makes all the difference in the world in terms of your ultimate outcome, because you've made that decision that you want to do it. Many times when I'm talking to clients and, they seem to be getting stuck on something. I mean, I don't see it moving forward. And I said, wait, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Why did you hire me?
Okay.
What are you expecting?
Good question. Yeah.
What are you expecting? And I always lay out, what to expect, what our scope of work is going to be on, what a coach is, what a coach isn't, that kind of thing. Right. But I sometimes think that we place upon ourselves, even after we make the decision to make a change or to solve a problem, that our expectations aren't necessarily matching what the issue and the problem is. Right. And so we have to, part of staying motivated is reality tests. Many times we don't check in with ourselves. How am I feeling about what I'm doing now to make this change? How's it feeling? Do I feel better? Do I feel engaged? Do I feel like this is working for me? And if I'm not feeling better and working, do I need to kind of regroup and make some other changes, or regroup and try something else? So part of staying motivated is constantly checking in with yourself. I'll give you an example. I talk about all the time about how people need to move, because we're not stick figures. We weren't created to walk around like this, Right. Joints, to move, and things that are supposed to be moving. So we have to get moving. But I'm not saying in order to get moving that all of a sudden you have to decide that you're going to run a 5,000 marathon. I'm not saying that. But I am saying you need to do something. And sometimes when you're making a change, adding something to your life that's good for you, in the process of solving a problem, you have to do it incrementally. Yes. So you don't set yourself up for failure, If you've never worked out before and you've basically been what your friends call a couch potato for 5 years, and then you decide you want to run a marathon, that's okay. But you don't get out the next day and start running a mile. Right. Exactly. Right. What you might do is get up the next day and maybe walk around the block. Yeah. Maybe you partner with someone who has the same kind of goals, and you work out a buddy plan together in terms of how you're going to do it. But just jumping into the icy cold water without a plan that's going to give you some sense of achievement as you're moving along.
Incremental growth. Yes.
Incremental growth. Exactly. So I think that, number one, you want to recognize that you want to make a change. You want to solve that problem. And number two, you're going to look for something that you can do incrementally that helps you towards that change, where you can have some demonstrated success. You can point to and say, wow, I did that. That success, what helps you to stay motivated is don't take that success for granted. Celebrate it. Yes.
Always celebrate. One of the things that I have in my pre-session strategy for clients that work with me, there are 5 questions that they need to answer in preparation for their session. And that first question is, what are you celebrating since our last meeting? What's going on in your life that you're celebrating and everything. And I love what you say, and I want to come back to what you were talking about in just the awareness. How many people will go along with situations and, how do I put it, acquiesce? Well, that's just the way it is, and there's nothing really that I can do about it. But you reached in your own personal journey, you reached a point where the pain level had reached a point where you knew you had to move forward. And I think for some people, just it's okay to have maybe that pain. And if that's what it takes to get you to take some kind of action, and one client I had, it was kind of the opposite. Instead of moving, he needed to begin a practice of silence, just slowing down and beginning a meditation practice, just a sitting in silence practice to come in touch with those inward feelings, because he wasn't giving himself permission to feel some of the I'll say unresourceful feelings that he was having, and to explore those feelings. So talk about that a little bit, how you, because so many people aren't really in touch with themselves and in touch with their feelings.
As someone that was suffering from anxiety, when I first started being treated for it, they gave me medication. And over about 2 or 3 weeks, I could feel the difference. Because basically what it does, it numbs you, basically. But I also saw after about 3 months that I was gaining weight. So that's when I decided, oh, heck to the no. I am not staying on this medication. My what's that word called? I'm going to say virtual, that's not it. My vainness kicked in.
Okay.
Because I was 50 something, I was like, at that time, about 52, 53. And I'm like, oh, heck no, I've been thin all my life. I'm not going to become a menopausal fatty because of this medication. They'll say, oh, I'm getting fat because of menopause. I'm like, oh, heck no, I'm getting fat because I'm using this medication to numb myself out so that I'm not really dealing with the causation. And sometimes, you need to take medication for whatever reason so that you can create an environment so that you can receive the rest of the therapy or the counseling or whatever it is that you're getting, because so much is going on in your head. You're just not calming yourself down to hear what's being said. Yes. But in this case, it was really all about just numbing me so I wouldn't feel this anxiety. And not to criticize the AMA, they have a place. My doctor was just trying to keep me from feeling that horrible feeling I have when I would first wake up in the morning. It was like going straight downhill in a roller coaster with no restraints every single morning. Every single morning. It was a terrifying feeling. And I still had to get up, go to work, get my kids dressed to go to work and everything else. So my husband would bring to me, before I even get out of bed, a cup of coffee. That's when I started drinking coffee. And for some reason, something about the caffeine triggered something in my brain, so that I wasn't feeling like that, and I was able to get up and go. That's when I started drinking coffee. I started drinking coffee when I was 45. I hated coffee up until then. Now I can't live without it. But anyway, so funny. But anyway, When I stopped taking the medication, then those day terrors, beginning of the day terrors came back.
Mm.
And instead of trying to avoid it, I finally realized that I had to learn to lean into it and allow myself to feel it, to stop running from it. Because all I was doing was pushing it back, and it was oozing out of my pores. The terror started coming out, during the course of my day. And then after a while, I'd have it until the sun went down. Craziness. So I had to go ahead and lean into it and allow myself to feel it. And that took the fear out of it. Many times I've learned when you face your fears, whatever you thought was going to be so horrible is never as bad as it seems. When you get the other side of it, it's almost exhilarating because you're like, wow, I made it through that. It wasn't as scary as I thought. And that's how I learned to deal with my anxiety and to learn to deal with really checking in with myself. When I would start to feel it coming, I say, okay, bring it on. Let's feel it right now. Go ahead and let myself feel it. And it was never as bad as I thought it was going to be. And after a while, that anxiety, I would say, was probably about 97% gone. I feel it. I very rarely feel it now, but when I do start to feel the edges of it, instead of resisting it.
Yes.
Now, there are other things that I do too, and I check in with myself. Okay, have I exercised enough this week or today? Am I drinking enough water for my brain so that the electrolytes are working well? Am I taking my SAMe, which I absolutely swear for me works? SAMe is something that is a naturally occurring chemical in our brain. And as we get older, studies show that we don't produce it as much, and we cannot find it from our foods. And I found out about this from a doctor. She was in medical school, and she was going to medical school in Seattle, Washington. And Seattle, Washington is the capital of depression because of the sunlight. She did not have a history of depression at all. But she starts going there where it's overcast, and I love Seattle. For all you Seattle folks out there, I love Seattle. It's a beautiful city.
Me too. I love Seattle.
I visited often, but because she wasn't getting enough sunlight, her instructors, her professors, told her about SAMe, that chemical that we get from the sunlight also had this same chemical in SAMe. She started taking it, and the depression and the other feelings she was having were just gone. Now for me, because I've had my panels done, I know what I'm lacking or what I need to work on. And that SAMe is almost non-existent. And it's something that I might have even been born with, been predisposed to not produce enough. But many people don't know about this. Now you can get it. Before she had to order it online and everything, before even ordering online was that popular. This is like 12 years ago. But now you can get it at Walmart or at your local drugstore. And I take between 500 and 1,000 milligrams a day. And that makes a difference. So when I'm feeling a certain way, I check in with myself. Okay, what have I done that I don't normally do? Did I go through my prayer and meditation today? Did I read my Jesus Calling? Did I do this? Did I do that? I go down the line, and almost always there's something that I didn't do in my own self-care that's contributing to how I'm feeling. So checking in with yourself and learning how to do that is fine. It's kind of like what they tell you when you are on a plane. They tell you, okay, if something happens and the air cabin pressure changes, okay, and the mask come down, do not put it on your child, put it on yourself first so that you can be there to think clearly for your child. It's the same thing. You go through your internal checklist. And this isn't being selfish or vain or it's all about you first. You're doing this because you do have loved ones in your life.
It's practical.
Yes. Absolutely. So that's what I would suggest. That people, that you begin, when you make that decision that you want to change, I guess a subscript to that is that you've also made the decision that you're going to put yourself on the front burner.
Yeah. And it's necessary. You can't help someone else if you're not taking care of yourself. That's a given. But again, part of, in our particular culture, in our Western culture, we have been so conditioned to thinking that's selfish. You're putting yourself before others. And whereas that can become unhealthy,
Mhm.
but putting yourself first, taking care of yourself is in some respects necessary. You even see, well, in Christian and other uh, religious contexts, putting others above yourself and honoring others more than yourself. Uh, that kind of presupposes that you're honoring yourself. And this is the part that I think maybe sometimes isn't taught or preached. Maybe the balance of that, because which kind of emerges out of our lack of awareness of our oneness and how interconnected we all are. Yeah, there are some words that popped out for me. You talked about this allowing, and here again, that's another thing. It's a little subtlety that can slip past us if we're not cautious, if we're not alert. But the whole idea of allowing. Just did a board. I told them I don't like retreats because the purpose of the retreat is to advance, to move forward. So let's call this a board advance, because the board is looking to advance in their mission in the world and everything. So uh, here again, the things of, even to the extent, okay, allowing ourselves to feel what we feel, but then to ask ourselves, what am I allowing in my life that isn't resourceful, that is contrary to, and that kind of allowing we might call tolerating. What am I tolerating?
Yes, yes. I think we tolerate a lot of things. And I
Yeah.
think that's what happened to me when I finally had basically what some people would call a breakdown or whatever. My tolerance level was just gone. I couldn't tolerate one more thing. I couldn't store one more thing in my emotional closet. It
Yeah.
just all came out. And when it all came out, you know how when you're packing, this always happens to me. When I'm packing to go somewhere, I got everything in the suitcase. When it's time to go back, even if I don't buy one more thing, I can never seem to pack it exactly the same way. It doesn't go back in the same way. I always end up putting something or, trying to figure out how to do another carry-on or something. Well, it's the same thing. Once it comes out, it's
Yeah.
hard to put back in. It
Yeah.
really is. And some of that stuff you don't want to put back in. Some of the stuff it's not what's serving you. It doesn't belong in your emotional closet anyway.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. I like that. I like that metaphor. Do I really need this? No. And what am I? And we even do this in relationships, and our uh, kind of conditioning in our early development of not making waves, not speaking up. So sometimes we don't call people on their stuff when maybe we should speak up, because it is affecting us in a particular way, and those things are all right. And to be able to come to some type of agreement, even if that agreement ends up that we agree that maybe it would be better for us to part the ways or to eliminate certain aspects of a relationship, be it business or personal.
Yes.
When we are allowing, because that kind of allowing or tolerating, as you've pretty much put it right out there, it ultimately affected your health and affected your mental health and well-being, because you were allowing these things or tolerating these things. And then the other thing that stuck out was to face your fear. And I love an acronym. I don't know where I first heard it, but fear, false evidence appearing real. But now neurolinguistic programming will tell you how you perceive the world, how you perceive the situations that are happening is your own creation, and you do have the power to change how you are perceiving. Is the way I'm perceiving this particular situation, is it resourceful? Is it giving me energy, or is it sucking energy out of me? So facing that fear, because a lot of our fears emerge out of, well, this is the way it's always been, and isn't, don't I kind of have to deal with this? And the answer is no, you don't. Create a different world. Create a brave new world that you can step into. And again, we're even from now when we get into institutional religion, that tells us, no, you don't do that. But at the same time, if you really look at, for me, out of my background, if you look at Christian scripture, it's telling you, yes, you do that. Don't.
Well, it says in his word that he will do a new thing.
Okay. There you go.
Okay, so I don't know where the doctrine comes from, the human doctrine, the man-made doctrine comes from, that's outside the will of God. He's ready to do a new thing in your life every single day.
Right.
So that's one of the lies that we tell ourselves.
Yes.
We have to stay on that path.
Yes.
That we've made that commitment, or we've this is
this
just the
is
way
the way
it is.
we've always done it.
Right, the way we've always done it. It's worked in the past,
Right.
but I could I just wrote a blog on travel tips for midlifers.
Okay.
And the reason why I thought it was important to write it, because I've just got through traveling. I'll be doing a lot of traveling over the next few months. But the reason why I wrote it is because how I travel now is very different than how I traveled when I was in my 20s and 30s. And I'm not talking about the technology. I'm talking about my mind, body, spirit stuff that I need, so that while I'm traveling, I'm energized and well and having a sense of joy, and not worn out, stressed out, that by the time I get to my destination, the whole time I'm just exhausted,
Yes.
And it's different, you change.
Yes.
You change. And it's not necessarily about growing older. I mean, you can look at that. I mean, everybody is growing older. We're all going to die. Never mind that piece. It's just about you change. It's a metamorphosis. And as you change, some of the things that you used to do that were fine when you were, the other way was fine. But now those ways no longer serve you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that all those ways or people were bad. Those ways and people were in your life for a reason during a season.
Exactly.
And if you allow those other impetus to come in to aid you during your next stage,
yes,
this life change that you decided you wanted to make, or that problem that you decided you want to solve, is so much easier to arrive to, because you've allowed the change to take place. Because that's one of the other things is sometimes you get motivated to recognize the change.
Yes.
And go through the process. But then there's that resistance to do that because it's not comfortable. It's not within your comfort zone. It's not a proven track record. It doesn't feel good. Right. What they say about feelings, right? I mean, if we always make decisions based upon our feelings, I'm not talking about our gut, that's something different, but our feelings, feelings aren't always true. They're not always what's really going on. Right.
In my sessions that I do publicly, and even with my individual coaching, I ask people to notice when they're feeling. And this is where feeling in general is important. But notice when you start to feel resistance. Because there's a sign for sure you feel resistance when you are starting to move outside of your norms, outside of your comfort zone. Because again, the conditioning that we get, this is the way we've always done it. That's kind of a mantra. But that is contradictory to what you just said about the new thing. We're supposed to be going from glory to glory. We're supposed to be continually progressing to higher levels each round, even to the extent where there are words in the Greek, meta. To go meta really means to go to a higher level of thinking. So we have the word metanoia, which has been translated to repent, which has... and this is the interesting thing in etymologies and words. Repent literally means go to a higher level of thinking, go to your higher mind. But in the church, it's come down to feel really bad about. You need to feel like a scumbag for all the crap that you've done. You need to go and cry and wail about all this terrible stuff. Well, no, that's not what it's saying. It's saying you need to think differently. You need to go to a higher level. Einstein put it this way: we cannot solve our current problems using the same level of thinking that created the problem. We've got to think at a higher level. We've got to go beyond the stinking thinking that created the problem.
And once again, it's all about your willingness and your decision. And you know, it's interesting because the journey that you decide to take when you make a lifestyle change is not necessarily an easy one. You're not necessarily choosing the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance is not to change. Exactly. So the expectation should be set that it's going to be an interesting journey and there may be some rocky things. But one thing I have learned along my journey, there hasn't been one time when, you know, God hasn't provided those tips and those tools and those techniques, those people that he works through, whatever you want to call it, that hasn't aided me along my path. And again, many times that kind of information, those kinds of tools and things are available to you, but you have to be open to it. You have to be expecting it. You know, you have to be expecting that it's going to happen. One of my favorite lines from a movie, which is really a silly movie, but it's one of my favorite movies because it's like not real, but I like it anyway. It's called Fools Rush In. And there's this one section where the main character, he's lost his girlfriend. And he doesn't know what to do. And he runs into this priest or pastor who's, of course, all-knowing. He's never seen him before, never. And he prophesies, or he talks into his life, and he says, you know, there are signs everywhere. And then all of a sudden, next thing he knows, he sees all these signs that remind him of her, that finally wake him up to the fact that he needs to go and get her. He needs to go and apologize and get her. And I believe that, you know, taking it, you know, kind of from that little frame, God provides signs for us everywhere. They're everywhere. And, you know, sometimes we see them, sometimes we don't. But when you're checking in with yourself, one of the things you want to check in when you're not feeling kind of, am I missing a sign? Because sometimes you'll get this feeling of conviction. Something's not right. You know, sometimes it's not about you. It's about what it is that, you know, God or whatever you want to call it, the Holy Spirit, the universe, whatever, the pet rock, is trying to place within your awareness to help you on that journey. I had an epiphany like that about 2 years ago when I turned 60. And it was so huge. It was so huge. And had been right in front of me the whole 8 years I had been on this journey. The whole time I had spent beating up on myself, like, what else do I need to do? What else do I need to do? How else do I need to do? What else do I need to do? It's right there. Right there. And, you know, I think the reason why it took me that long was I was at a stage in my life at 60, you know, another pivotal moment where you're already kind of doing the self-introspection. You're like, oh my God, I'm lucky if I have 20 years left or whatever the sandhill you tell yourself. And I'm like, okay, God, I'm 60. Come on now. I know there's something else. Where's the breakthrough? Where's all this stuff? And so I was looking. I was listening. I was questioning. I was going deep. And when I went deep, I was like, oh my God, I didn't have to do all of that because it was right there the whole time. The whole time. But you know what? You know, I believe that God is, and I'm a Christian, you know, I believe that God is an on-time God. You know, that it happens when it's supposed to happen. So rather than when you find out, beat up on yourself, you know, like, oh, why didn't I know this? It's like, you know, you celebrate that. You celebrate that. And you thank God for the journey. Because many times when you're on that journey, the value of the valley is that journey. It's not even necessarily about the destination. It's all about what you learn in that valley. Exactly.
And I think I love that as another metaphor, a word for our lives. It is a journey. There's no destination. Success is a journey. It's not a destination. It's a process that continues. People come into our lives. They don't necessarily know it, but they come. I've had people that have come into my life to help me learn patience. They didn't know that that's what they were doing, but they were teaching me patience. I've had people that have helped me learn how to listen better and to pull things out and to hear what's not being said.
Yes.
So there are so many nuances, and it's just at 70, I'm a kid again. It's just absolutely amazing to me. And I think that's where a lot of my energy comes. And going back to what you had said earlier, I use I'm kind of a Star Wars and Star Trek fan, and I have a metaphor that I use in my mind. I'll come into an environment and I'll feel some of this negative energy or whatever, and I'll do a Jean-Luc Picard, shields up. Yeah, I'll do a shields up, make it so, and my shields go up around me, and nothing is going to penetrate that, okay,
It's funny that you mentioned him, because I used to dream about John. He used to be in my dreams a few years ago, and I think it was because he had such quiet power and confidence. I don't remember his character even raising his voice that many times.
Yeah.
But he was so confident.
Yeah. But there was and I love the way they showed the vulnerability too, because I know that, and I'll say this, I make no bones about saying this publicly. I am aware of some of my strengths, and I'm somewhat aware of the presence that I may bring, but I am also very much human, and I do have feelings, deep feelings. Mm-hmm. And, there are times, as a matter of fact, I called a colleague a couple of days ago, and I said, I don't know why I called you, but I know I'm feeling really vulnerable right now, and I just needed to reach out to someone, and I felt I could do that with you. And these are things, again, part of our journey, finding those people, whether it is a coach, a pastor, an imam, whoever, and it doesn't have to be anybody in that particular professional type of a vein, but that surround yourself with those people that you can trust with your deepest feelings. Yes. And maybe it's not going to be a lot of them.
No, there aren't many, and they sometimes change as you go along your journey. I call them dream keepers. I have two things that I look out for on my journey to stay motivated, and I tell the people that I work with to stay motivated. The first thing is to figure out who those dream keepers are. The people who are your cheerleaders, your rah-rah team, but also who will lovingly point out in a constructive way when you're, going down the wrong path, or when you're not following that thing that you said you want to follow.
Yes.
Then the other thing I tell them to look out for are those energy vampires.
Oh boy.
Suck the life out of you, suck the energy out of you, because they're so negative. Negative about what you're trying to accomplish, or negative about the world, or just plain negative. And many times, as we talked about earlier, those people are the ones who are closest to you, your family.
Yeah.
You can't fire your family, you love your family. Most, so you're just aware of that. And so you don't necessarily look for validation from that source, because it's a setup. You might one or two great things said, but there's 5 other things. You're operating at a negative at that point.
Yeah, the big butt comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
And feeling like, wow, this, you're like, okay.
Right.
So you want to make that part of your quest along your journey, is to be looking out for the signs of those individuals that, are willing to hold your dream.
Yes.
Hold you accountable in a loving, constructive way.
Yes. And that is, when you find that, for anybody that's watching, listening, or will, that is a treasure when you find that, those people. And again, you have to allow them to come in to your life. And the hard part is when the time comes, because again, it's a flow, it's a journey. And there comes that time when you have to allow them to leave. And I've had some in my life that left from my life, not that they wanted to or I wanted them to, but in that it was time for their transition to a higher plane of existence, to step into that eternal life, so to speak. So, and this is all good. I never will forget one of my teachers early on, Mr. Webb, was a phenomenal man, very deep, very deeply spiritual, and was one of the influences in my life. One of my guardians now at the higher level. So, and I do believe in guardian angels. I believe that as science tells us, the conservation of energy and matter, you can neither create nor destroy energy. So the energy that we are, the energy that you are, Lynnis, that you're in that form that you are in now. But when you leave that vehicle that we know as our bodies, doesn't mean you're gone. You go on at a different level. I think
I believe that too. I do. I have two in particular that I'm thinking of that were my dream keepers. One has transitioned on in life and is, I believe she is my guardian angel. And although I miss her,
yes.
I feel that she's still there rooting for me and planting seeds. And the other one is still here on earth. It's just that her time has come and gone.
Yeah.
And it was time for her to transition on to someone else. But she was my dream keeper for almost 8 years.
Yes.
I mean, really slaying dragons and everything on my behalf.
Yeah.
There came a time where, it was just time for her to move on. And we're still friends, but the friendship has changed. Her assignment has changed. I believe that God gives us assignments.
Exactly.
For ourselves and for other people. Sometimes part of our development, and I truly believe this, part of our development comes in helping others. Because many times the things that you strive to help others are the same things that you might need help in yourself. And then you're helping others, you learn the things you need to learn yourself.
Watch it now.
Am I preaching to the choir?
Well, but and we had that discussion earlier, and it is amazing how GUS brings people together at particular times for particular reasons to uphold and encourage each other and to grow together out of what, again, that emergence leading from the future. I don't know the future, but in a way, I do know the future because I am consciously or subconsciously creating that future. Do I create that? I don't want to create it unconsciously. Mm-hmm. I want to create it consciously, intentionally, structured by, upheld by, reinforced by the power of love. God is love. And we're not talking about the eros love. I mean, sexuality is something that needs to be celebrated, but sometimes our focus is too much on the sexuality. But this type of love is a transcendent love that you are talking about, Lynnis, where we can hold that other person's dream in trust, and we can speak into that, and we can bring loving feedback in the form of feedback as opposed to criticism. We can bring a loving correction and not denigration and beating people up. We can say, even in the way that we do it. I tell people all the time, sometimes a well-structured question is much more powerful than a statement.
This is true.
Have you thought about, or did you consider? And then to speak about, again, when this particular situation happened, I felt a dissonance. I didn't feel a real resonance in that. Have you thought about maybe a different approach to it, or, whatever? Things that are going to build up, not tear down. That's one of the things I'm amazed at how time is flying here on us, but one of the things that you brought up before in one of our private conversations was how, and there's certainly a time for, and I applaud the Me Too movement. I applaud the women's liberation movement. I know the things that my mother went through, rest in peace, that when she was alive, and she was a powerful woman. She was doing things. She was a maintenance systems analyst for a very large bank, and had people that worked for her, males that worked for her, that were being paid more than she was being paid, and she was supervisor. So
Wow.
all that being said, I'm not saying that it's done, neither is civil rights or anything, but I do get concerned about how we continue the journey toward equality. And I believe, and I think I get the impression you do as well, I believe that there is a time for, and I'm going to be a little bit pretentious here when I say this, but I think there's a time when men like me, not saying that I got it all together, but I understand it, I think, better than a lot of men that I know. And women like you come together and help other men and women come to a balance and an understanding and a togetherness that has been lost, because I do believe with all my heart that is Gus's intention. We're seeing it happen in the church, in the Christian church, with the ordination of women in denominations that used to not do that. But the problem is, in some instances, not all, the women are being ordained, but they're just being tolerated, and they're not really being
Right.
honored.
Yeah.
And
They're
that's
not being allowed to contribute in the same way. And I think you're right. That kind of goes back to this old saying that you hear all the time, but it's absolutely true. It takes a village.
yes,
We're not going to be able to grow as human beings, as humankind, without being able to help each other
yes,
with a great deal of respect, kindness, and love.
yes,
Using our wisdom. And I think that there'll come such a time as this, which is happening right now, where people are going to have to go back to some of the basic truths that they know, that kind of let go of, or they've kind of extrapolated it and turned it into something else. But being kind to one another, being helpful to one another, respecting each other for the human beings that we are, looking for the humanity within one another makes such a difference. But it ultimately starts with doing that for ourselves. Because one of the issues with walking wounded is that when you're feeling that way, it's hard for you to help anybody else.
yeah, yeah,
But when you begin to heal yourself, you also, I think, begin to be aware of the need for it to happen in so many other lives. So when I talk to people about, getting motivated to make that lifestyle change, and you're beginning to see some differences, well, part of that experience is telling your story.
yes,
Sharing your testimony.
yeah,
For those of you who are Christians, you know how important the testimony is.
yeah,
It's not just about the journey, it's about the testimony.
yeah,
It's about
right,
the testimony.
right,
Because there's someone out there who needs to hear your story and needs to hear from whence you came. So as you get that motivation and things begin to happen, sharing that with others and sharing your experiences not only maybe helps them along their journey, but it kind of refuels you and remotivates you all over again.
yes,
For you to continue what you're doing, or to maybe check in and make some changes.
Yep.
But we can't arrive to the society that we know that Jesus wanted us to have, that Buddha talks about, and everything else.
Yeah, right, right.
Recognizing the humanity within each other.
Right.
And we need to help each other. We're not islands individually on this planet. We are on the same planet.
Right.
And we're here to really assist and help each other.
That's Lynnis, you got this, girl. You got it going on, And we do hit these struggles, but we gotta be, you got this, and then I had another friend of mine who is my coach on occasions, and she said to me, she says, I got you. Don't worry. I got you. She and her husband, she was an administrator in a church that I pastored a while back. Mm-hmm. And Jackie and Troy, her husband Troy, boy, we went through such a bonding. And it emerged, as you talk about telling stories,
Yes.
it emerged out of the loss of their son, Shondell, 12 years old, and he was stricken with neuroblastoma cancer.
What?
And his dream was, he said he wanted to grow up to be a pastor and a police officer like his pastor.
Wow.
At the time I was pastoring the church, I was a community policing specialist for a law enforcement agency. And so I was active duty police officer and pastor, and that was what he wanted. As a result of that, Shuttler's Uniform Company donated a uniform for him. The mayor and the chief of police came over to the hospice and swore him in as my assistant chaplain, and he had a police burial. And I was so honored because so many of the officers from our department came to his funeral and everything, and they all came up and to the casket and saluted him and everything. I'm getting emotional.
Wow, that is.
These are the things that, you know, to be able to allow ourselves, allow GUS to lead us in ways, this whole idea of, oh, I could never, you can do all things.
I have it written down right here today for my thing to think about. You can do all things through God.
And through God, you know, it is possible. One of my favorite songs from Tremaine Hawkins, all things are possible. So that's where we have to go. Believe that it's possible. Lynnis, you are amazing. If you were closer, I'd give you a big old hug. But
I can receive that.
And I do so look forward to, I think it is in our destiny somewhere to work together and to share publicly with folks to help. You know, there is no obstacle that anyone that is listening to this program, I don't care how big, how small, there is a way, and you can go beyond where you are. And my thing is, you know, I may not attain to all, as a matter of fact, some of the things that I wanted some years ago aren't even as important to me now. I don't even care about those things. I just care about touching a life, making a difference. And I encourage you, listen to this program. You're able to listen to this program several times. You ever go to a movie, you know, and then you see the movie again at home on TV or you on Netflix or something, and you see something, you say, I didn't see that the first time I watched it. There have been some seeds planted here, some good, as my cousin used to say, we done dropped some knowledge here today. So I just encourage you to receive it. Lynnis, tell folks again how they can get in touch with you, and if they want to reach out to you and inquire more about your services, your academy, the things that you have. Again, share with the audience how to get up.
Just go to my website at wellnesswoman40.com. That's wellnesswoman40.com. Just go to the website, and there you can leave me a message. All my social media is there. And also links to my shows and to my online school, to my magazine, and my book. My book's on the site, but I got to do a banner on there so you can just go directly to my book as well. But everything is there. And I would really love to hear from your listeners. Really would.
Awesome. And for those, well, you're noticing on your screen beneath Lynnis, there are some of her contact information is there for you. And we try to always with our guests keep their contact, their basic main contact information there for you. But I still want Lynnis to tell you and to encourage you. My information is there as well, victoriousliving.com. And of course, we are all about empowering and releasing human potential through heightened self-awareness. Become aware of who you are. Know who you are. God don't make junk. GUS don't make junk. I don't care what your situation has been, where you come. It's all for a reason. And you are amazing. So I encourage you to become aware of the gift that you are and walk in that giftedness. If anybody tells you otherwise, I straighten them out. All right. I got the tools. I got the talent. Yeah, this is the world according to Gus. My guest has been the amazing Lynnis Mullins, and I tell you, just a wealth of information, encouragement, and love just spews from her. You can reach out to me as well. Keep your eye on selfdiscoverymedia.com. A lot of exciting things, and our founder, Sarah Troy, has got all kinds of stuff up her sleeve besides her arm. Her arm is up there, but there's some other stuff up her sleeve as well. So keep your eye on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Charles Eduardos. Be sure to check out our next edition of The World According to Gus.
We hope that you enjoyed the show. To hear more of these wonderful shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com, just look up our podcast genre list. You will see many shows archives there ready for listening. Don't forget to share these wonderful shows. And if you wish to be a guest or a host, or you have an organization that needs to be highlighted, contact us at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com. Bye for now.